Appreciate your attention for this short time that we have together. So if you have your cell phones with you, could you please put them somewhere that is not in your hands? Because we won't be here for very long, so we would really appreciate having your attention for this very short time. Thank you very much. So to get started today, I would like to ask all of you that are seated right now, if you know of anybody, if there's anybody in your family or a relative or you yourself have served in the military or are currently serving, could you please stand? If you know anybody or anyone in your family. Wow. Wow. Okay, now for those of you that are standing, I would like those of you, if you are not currently standing, but you have already signed on to join the military, or that is a very strong possibility for your post-secondary plans, to please join those that are standing. Are there any more that would stand? A couple, all right, very nice, very nice. Okay, so those of you that are standing, and also those of you that are sitting, I would like you to keep these people in mind today and then also on the 26th. Okay, so go ahead and have a seat. Thank you so much for standing. That's surprising. That was more than I thought. Okay. Very good. Okay. So we as a high school have a pretty great opportunity coming up here at the end of April, on April 26th, Friday, April 26th. And that opportunity is to be able to welcome home 25 of our nation's heroes from their honor flight. And what the Honor Flight is, if you're not sure, it's a program, it's an organization that has the mission of taking veterans to Washington, D.C. so they can see and experience the memorials that have been built to honor their sacrifice and their service and the sacrifice that they made in choosing to serve. Our organization is a little bit different. We are 1 in 5 in the nation that pairs students with the veterans. So National Honor Society members have the opportunity to apply as a student guardian, and they accompany a veteran to Washington, D.C. for this trip. The thing that's different this year is that we as a whole school get to welcome these veterans home during the school day, which is pretty cool. It's really, if you think of all of those people that were standing, each and every one of us has been positively impacted by a veteran just by enjoying the freedoms that we have every day and living where we do. So this is a pretty great opportunity to be able to thank them when they come in. So back to why we're here today. When they get here on the 26th, we get to cheer them in. And it is a big homecoming. It's a highlight of the trip for many of these veterans. And we get to make that homecoming extremely special for them. But cheering veterans coming in for a homecoming is a little bit different than cheering at a sporting event or even for a performance. It's just a little bit different. On the 26th, if you would like to wear red, white, and blue, that would be awesome. That would be a great way to show your support. If you have time between now and then and you would like to make signs that either say, thank you for your service, welcome home, we appreciate you, those types of signs, that would be awesome. That would be a great way to show your gratitude to the brave veterans that are coming home on the 26th. Face paint, you can keep that at home. You probably don't need the face paint. But wearing the red, white, and blue and showing your signs is a great way to show appreciation. Also, thinking of all of you that were standing and thinking of those family members and thinking of the 25 individuals that are going to be walking in, they were brave enough to serve. They were brave enough to stand up for us and answer the call to serve our nation, and in turn serving us. So to show them the respect when the national anthem is sung, it's very important for us to keep in mind that it is not Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones walking through those doors. It is our nation's heroes. It is our veterans that are coming in. So as we listen to our national anthem, the last line is home of the brave, because we're thinking of those brave men and women that served our country. And it's a pretty special opportunity for all of us to be able to thank them in this way. It's a pretty big deal. So I also invite you as you're listening to our Wamego High School High Voltage, as you're listening to them sing our national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, try to picture in your mind what did Francis Scott Key see to inspire him to write these words? And why are they still important to us today? What can they mean to us today? Those words that were written so long ago but we sing so often. And what do those words mean to those that are coming in that we get to welcome home? So kind of keep that in mind as we listen. Also, so I am pretty much finished. So let's go ahead and please remove your hats if you have hats on. Place your hands over your hearts and let's stand as the Wamego High School sings, or the High Voltage sings, the national anthem.
Thank you, High Voltage. You can have a seat. That was tremendous. Thank you all. As Mrs. Sprinkle said, we have an opportunity on the 26th, which is a Friday, to welcome back our veterans. And just to give you a little heads up about that day, we'll be seated like we are today. Over here on this side will be members of our community and the family members of our veterans that are going to be welcomed back will be on the floor. A lot of times we get in at night, and it was kind of a happy accident that this time we're coming in the next day. And so we have an opportunity to say thank you, welcome home to our veterans. And when they're coming in here, there'll be 2 Korean War veterans. They're in their 90s. That was known as the Forgotten War. And we're gonna make sure that day that they're not forgotten. There's 2 that are members of the Cold War. And then we have 21 Vietnam War veterans, 2 of which served in Vietnam and Desert Storm. So they will be coming in here and we'll be able to welcome them that day. We're very fortunate today. I have 2 gentlemen who I hold in very high regard, and I gave them a call and I said, I'd really like our student body to hear about the opportunity we have that day. And true to form, when I asked them, they stepped up because these guys served, and they have served. So I'm going to introduce them and let them say a little bit about the opportunity we have on that Friday to welcome back our veterans. So fellas, if you want to come join me here at half court, we don't have one of those shots where we get to make a lot of money or anything like that, but it would help. So we have with us today Mr. Bill Powers. Bill is a Vietnam War veteran. He served from 1968 to 70. He was a sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he's going to share a little bit with us today. And Mr. Larry Dutch, who served from 1969 to 1971 in Vietnam. He also was a sergeant, and he was in the Army. And so they're going to tell us a little bit about their experience and what homecoming means to them. And so I'm going to let them kind of share some of their thoughts. As always, let's make sure that our head's where our feet's at, okay? And give our undivided attention to these guys. And let's make them feel welcome here. Let's give them a little round of applause.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Sprinkles. This is, to me, it's just an opportunity to talk about this program and do that in just a little bit. And also, good morning. Okay, we can do better. Good morning. Good morning. All right, because let me tell you what, every day is a gift. Every day is a gift. I learned that at 19 years old. So I want to take you back in time just quickly to help build what this all means. I went into the Marine Corps in June of 1968. The United States was heavily engaged in the Republic of Vietnam and fighting the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong. What inspired me to do that, I was telling Sean about that. I've spoken about that with other people. There was a president by the name of John Kennedy who was the president from 61 to 63. When he was inaugurated, one of the things that he said in his inauguration speech was, "Ask not what your country can do for you, rather what you can do for your country." John Kennedy was a World War II veteran. He was a hero in the war. He was in the Navy. And he, for that time, perceived a threat internationally. Well, when he was assassinated in 63, I was about 13 years old. And I remember that day vividly. I was in school, by the way. That happened. Well, I grew up in an Army family. My father was a career soldier. He'd served in World War II in Korea. My mother was a native from the Baltic state of Estonia. They met at the end of the war in Salzburg, Austria. That's why I'm here. Okay. Now, that's a whole story in itself. We don't have time for that. But when I enlisted in the Marine Corps, I had a year of college under my belt. Well, I got drafted in the spring. There was a draft at the time. Well, I knew I was going to get drafted, so I went down and I enlisted in the Marine Corps. That was in Manhattan. I don't even know what that building was now. It used to be the post office. Yeah. We got to Vietnam, and the United States at that time, there was an active war, anti-war movement. There was a lot of cultural, social upheaval in the country. My generation was a big part of that. Questioning authority, you can't trust anybody over 30, that whole thing. But I went ahead and enlisted because I knew I was going to do that at some point anyway. So I was in Army ROTC, and if I'd stayed in school, I was going to stay. But I knew I got drafted, so I made my decision. And of course, my father was completely unhappy. I announced to have joined the Marine Corps. So I go serve. I was in an infantry unit. And I want to take you back to 1969. When I went to Vietnam, the Marine Corps was serving a 13-month tour. Everybody else was 12. At some point, they dropped off a month while I was there. So I got to come home unannounced to my parents because I didn't have a cell phone, didn't have a telephone, I didn't have social media, I didn't have anything. The only way to communicate was by letter, and there wasn't enough time. So I came home in December of 1969. I arrived in San Francisco on a plane that flew from Okinawa to the United States, full of guys who were just returning home. And none of us knew each other. We were all individuals, strangers to each other, we were just glad to be here. When I got a reception in San Francisco at that time, well, there wasn't a reception. There were some guys who had families that had driven all the way to San Francisco to greet their son, most of the sons at the time. And got off the plane, went into the terminal, and back in those days, there was no TSA, there was no security checks. Anybody and everybody could walk around the terminal. So I'm walking down the terminal, there I am, this young corporal, waiting to get my flight, and there's a bunch of, well, in those days we called them hippies, and the greeting was, I can't use the language, right? I simply can't. It was pretty foul. So that was my greeting home. So like most guys, I went home. Once I got out of the service, I returned, went to school, got a job, got married, had a family, so on and so forth. Flash forward now to 1991, Desert Storm. That was a 100-hour war, which annihilated the Iranian army. Most of the general officers at that time were veterans of the Vietnam War, and they took the lessons learned. So when they came home after that victory, they got a ticker tape parade in New York City. They went down Broadway. You know, I didn't see that. But I supported it because I understood what it meant to be accepted by your countrymen and thanked. So let's flash forward now to, and by the way, I worked for the Army for 30-some years. And mostly in family programs, so I understood the impact that all of those deployments during the War on Terror, how that affected families. So flash forward now to, let's see, 2022, that was my class. April 2022, after my good friend Larry, we've known each other for forever, said, you got to do this. And so that process, I applied, met the crew, met my guardian, who was Avery Wilson. Some of you may know her. Avery, she was wonderful. And by the way, who are guardians? Are going to be guardians on this next floor? Keep it standing. All right. Well, thank you. By the way, you don't know what it means. You really don't. But you'll find out. Thank you. Well, anyways, we go to Washington, fly out of Kansas City, stop in Baltimore, and as we're deplaning in Baltimore, because we're going to catch a bus there and go to D.C., we're walking into the terminal, and there's a standing, and I'm not kidding you, hundreds of people in that terminal, a standing ovation as we deplane. I was speechless. I did not anticipate that happening. I couldn't believe it. Because that's not the way I came home. No. So we do the thing, we come back, our guardians take care of us. Avery was absolutely superb. I tried to help, she said, no, that's my job. She did everything. She carried my bags, whatever. It was unbelievable. Gave me great faith in high school students. Great. So we come back, we land in Kansas City, we get back here, and there's, as we come into Wamego, they've got, the streets are lined with people receiving us. People in this community, I'm not from Adam. We get here, same thing. Now, I've been to Washington, D.C. many times. I've seen the wall at least a half dozen times. And I have friends whose names are on that wall. I'm because their life ended in the 1920s. So I want you to understand that the Vietnam veterans, the Korean War veterans, the unknown war, well, my father's here. They got no reception. So even those guys, the World War II guys are almost gone. Almost all. The impact of you being here to receive them here, you have no idea how that's going to touch them. I just want to tell you. But believe me, it will be meaningful in ways that you cannot imagine. And for their families, because their families live with us. I have 2 adult children. They know what I did, what it was like. And they grew up in Junction City, went to school at Junction City High School, went up to college, got their lives now. But they've told me, man, Dad, we are so grateful to have you share that with us. I'm sorry, I'm emotional. It's just the way it is. When I got here, I was so blown away. I told people I'm not up from this community, but I feel like I'm a part of it now. That's what Wamego did. Wamego, Kansas. Or as Larry and I like to say, Ogie Mom's Cat Sasnak. Okay. So I just got to tell you, it's important for you to understand what this means, and that this high school has the privilege and opportunity to offer this to veterans, because until I've gone through it, I have no idea. And the guys that are going to go through this next class, they don't either. They really don't. So thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for everything you've done. God bless you all. Simplify.
My name's Larry Dutch, and this is my town. And I thank you, Bill, for what you said. You've made Wamego his town, too. I thought I was going to get up here without being emotional, but everything Bill said about his growing up, I get to say ditto. I come from an Army family. My dad was a career military soldier. Grew up knowing that I was going to join the military. Didn't know when, or where, or what service. Went to a year of college, Air Force ROTC. Got drafted in 1969 in the Army. I know I was getting drafted, so I just went and said, I'll just volunteer for the draft. Ended up going to Vietnam in April of 1970. And came back in September of 71. I was in the artillery, ended up becoming a sergeant, chief of a gun section. The differences of coming home, like Bill said, we were both 13 years old when President Kennedy was shot, and that just turned the nation around. But coming home, I left Vietnam and landed in the Seattle-Tacoma airport. I landed there an hour before I left Vietnam. It has all to do with the international date line. But got to Fort Lewis in I think the early morning, or not early, but late afternoon. And my dad had been stationed in Fort Lewis, sorry. Did I say Fort Riley before? We were at Fort Lewis getting out of the Army. And so one of the sergeants that was in charge of the reception station, he singled me out and he said, "You're in charge." So I said, "Well, that's probably providential," because I knew Fort Lewis. I knew how to get around, so we got around there really quickly. And I think probably 8 hours after we arrived at Fort Lewis, I was out of the Army. I had $600 in my pocket. I had nowhere to go. I was going to wait for my dad, because providentially, when I got to the reception station as I was leaving Vietnam, there was a guy who was doing the processing that I worked with when I was at Fort Riley, Bob DeClue. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" He said, "I'm processing people out." He said, "I'll call your dad." And he did. My dad was on his way to Fort Lewis to pick me up. He said he's going to let me see the country that I fought for. And I do it again. I fight for this country. This is a great country. Don't let anybody tell you any different. This is the greatest country in the world. And it is a great honor to serve this country. And for those of you who are going to join the military, God bless you. We need people like you to defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. So I got out of the Army. I had nowhere to go. So I got on the bus that was going to the Seattle-Tacoma Airport. They said, "Don't wear your uniforms." I had nothing else to wear. So I wore my uniform to the Seattle-Tacoma Airport and sat there, watched hundreds of people go by me, sat there in my uniform, and nobody said a thing to me. It was the loneliest existence I'd had. My dad picked me up. I got back to Fort Lewis. My dad picked me up and he took me to the golf course. I got out of my uniform and I left it laying. Went into the men's locker room. I left my uniform folded up on one of the benches. And that's the last time I wore that uniform. Because of the hate and the vitriol that was part of this country toward the Vietnam veteran. And I talked to some people who were vehemently opposed to the Vietnam War, and I said, "Well, you know, you guys spit at me. You guys called me baby killer." "Oh, well, we weren't protesting you. We were protesting the government and their involvement." I said, "I'm not the government. I'm a soldier. Don't spit on me." When I walked through those doors, after coming back from the Honor Flight, you can't believe what that meant to me. Having people I didn't even know standing up and cheering. I don't want to say thank you. Excuse me. Mr. Horning. Kiana Meyer, who was my guardian. Tried to pick my bag up a couple of times, and then Kiana let me know very clearly that that's not my job. I want to thank you for making me feel so welcome, for welcoming me home, and for making Wamego, Kansas, every veteran's hometown. Thank you.
We talk about this a lot in our history classes, that anytime someone blesses you with their time and their story, that is a pretty big deal. And to be able to be part of their story and part of the story of the 25 veterans that'll come in here and the healing that has the potential to take place. I just want to thank everybody in advance. The band, high voltage, everybody that's going to help that day to make that possible. And just thank you sincerely. And let's give one more, let's practice this, because at the end, we're going to all have a standing ovation for our veterans. So let's give these two veterans a standing ovation. Thank you. All right, before we dismiss, and we'll do that here shortly, next time we'll be together in this forum will be Friday the 26th. If you have family members that you want to invite, please do, because this section will be open and we'll be able to welcome another group home. This will be our 12th flight. And so at the end of this flight, we'll have been able to honor 284 veterans. So again, keep doing great things, keep making good decisions, and we will see you on the 26th. Thank you all.